So in this video, we're going to introduce some interesting topic about the sequence looping. So the objective of this video is we're going to look at the data types as a sequence. So that will include the string, tuples, and lists, and those has the common feature that all those elements are actually treated as a sequence. So like a string is a sequence of letters, tuples are a sequence of the same data type of elements. Actually the tuples are the sequence of elements of the any type. This is a sequence of elements of any types, and it's mutable, while tuples are immutable. We can create a sequence, and we can use the loops to actually go through every elements. We also can use index and slice for sequence, and use sequence functions and operators. So that's today's tasks. First of all, understand a sequence. A sequence basically is ordered list of elements. So elements are actually lined up, just like the waiting list in the post office, for example. That's a sequence. So each of them has kind of like index or priority value, right? The elements is actually the actual items in the sequence. Iterate means to move through the sequence in order. Normally use a loop. It's called iterations. List of your top 10 movies, for example, is actually a sequence, because each movies has a importance index, right? That's called the index. So we can use the loop to actually iterate over a sequence. The basic structure is going to look like this. You have a for loop, for, and a in. Those are the two keywords, and then you have a colon as indication. The top part is actually the for loop, and the bottom part is actually the instructions. So here's in the middle here, the letter is actually one element in the sequence. Alrighty, so here's another one, is 4 letters in words, and then we can print letters, and it can be translated into a regular loop. You can do something like a for index in a range of names of the word, and then you can actually indexing that particular elements by using index, and then you get the elements and you print elements. However, this is much more elegant than the code here. Here is kind of a little bit messy and lengthy too. Combine the for loop with the range function, then use the length to find the range. That's just one of the ways to translate. The range function, again, we've already probably see them before. The range basically is just to give you a list of numbers starting. By default, it's starting from 0 to up to 5. So, but not equals to 5. So total elements is going to be 5 elements. So which does that mean? The range here, if with the full parameters, the first one is going to be start value, end value, and that's the step. The step is right here. So the range, the general form is start, end, and step. So we're starting from 0, ends up to 50, and the step is 5. So the very first one is going to be 0, and the next one will be 5, because the step is 5. So we add 5 to the previous value, that becomes 5. Add 5 to previous value, that will be 10. Add 5 to previous value will be 15. And when you reach to 45, add 5 to the last one will be 50. However, we are instead reach up to 50, not include 50. So that will be our last elements. Return a sequence of integer range. That's the general form. We can counting forward, and also we can do backwards. So if I have 10, I basically starting from 10 ends at 0 every time I go -1 step. So this is how it means. For comparing the for loop and the while loops, for a for loop, it's like a while loop, repeat. It's actually repeat loop body. Unlike the while loop, unlike the while loop, it does not repeat based on the condition. It's actually goes through the sequence, right? Goes through the sequence. Repeats the loop body for each element in the sequence. Ends with when it reaches the end of the sequence. So a for loop is interesting. It's a lot different. It's different to many other programming language. Indexing sequence, sequential access. So normally we are doing sequential access in order, which means, however, when we do index, that means we can randomize access the elements. We can randomly access index as long as we know what the index is. The elements or members, they are basically the items in a sequence. Python allows the random access of sequences by using index. So how do we work with index? So on the top one is actually when we do the positive indexing. So starting from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then at the bottom, we actually do minus. So we do reversely in indexing. So we can do -1, -2, -3. And so this way, we can do access both ways. Using brackets and position number to index, we can simply just use the brackets and then a index number. The index should be able to become positive or negative. So that will give us this access, random access. The names of a sequence, normally the positive number actually start from 0 and ends as whatever the names -1, and the negative number is going to be starts as -1 and ends with the it will ends with the last elements. Normally is the names of the elements. However, you're going to add a negative sign in front of it. Attempt to access beyond the last position will result in error. The error will say it is out of range. It is out of range. When you do slicing, once you understand the indexing, then you can do slicing. Slicing basically means you have the beginning index, end index, and then normally you can have a step as well. So in this case, for slicing, normally we have the beginning and end of the index. Then we can slice that segment of elements. So in this case, we have a word, it's pizza, and we can print from 0 to up to 5. So from 0 to up to 5, that will be exactly the pizza. And then we are going to print out slicing from 1 to 3. So we starting from 1, that will be I, and to 3, that will IZZ. That will give us IZ. I'm sorry. Yep. And so word -4. -4. Remember, it's actually this is going to be our so this is -1, -2, -3, -4. That will be our minus, and what will be I. to positive 4, so a positive 3 up to positive 3, that will be iz. So you can do both positive and negative indexing. You can misuse them, you can mixture them and use them. And the indexing and slicing examples, you can actually try all of those. You can try all of those and then play with the code. And use sequence operators and functions. The typical functions will be length, and also you can use in, like A is in a sequence. If it is true, then it's going to return a true. If it's false, it's going to return a false. The length function actually give you how many elements inside a list, inside a sequence. And you can use in operator. So it's just indicate if that a particular element is inside a sequence. Using in, immutable versus mutable sequence. So mutable basically means changeable, immutable means unchangeable. So when we have a string, normally the string is immutable. We cannot change it. If you want to change something, you will have to create a new string from the existing one. The string immutability, like if you want to change one of the elements, you can't. However, you can always assign a new string. And in a program, if you have a string like this, it is actually a constant value. It's actually counted. String can be counted as a constant value because you cannot change it. However, if you want to make some changes, you can always concatenate some string to make it a new string and assign a variable to the new string. A tuple is basically a immutable sequence of value of any types. It can be a string or integer, a combination of those. However, a tuple use a parenthesis, while a list use a brackets, and a set use a curly brackets, and dictionary use a curly brackets as well. But for sets and dictionaries, the order does not matter, so probably you don't use many of those. They don't treat it as a sequence. Tuples, you can actually use the tuple for some not changeable elements. Tuples are immutable. Okay. You can also use the length and a for loop and in operator. You can do index slicing and concatenating. It's the same as the lists. Use the name and in tuples. You can, for example, you can use name of function to the tuple to find out what's the how many elements in that tuple. You can use the in to check if a certain element is inside a tuple. And the same thing, you can do indexing and slicing. And keep in mind that tuples are not changeable. However, you still can concatenate the tuples. Okay, now the last one is where I actually come to the word jumble game. It is actually, how do we implement this? We actually will plan the whole thing. We will first create the empty jumble word, and then has a while loop. Choose the word has letter in it. Extract a random letter from the chosen word and add the random letter to the jumble word, and then we can show the code actually in our lab part. And as a summary in this video, we actually covered briefly about what's a sequence. So generally, a sequence include the string, lists, tuples, and that's the major ones. And then how do we use them? So you can use the for loop and in operation and indexing slicing for all the sequences. They follow the same thing. Okay, so that's pretty much all for this lecture.